The world is on the brink of a nuclear explosion. The US is preparing dangerous tests. The situation at the front is critical. The enemy has broken through the defenses in the Pokrovske direction. The Investigative Committee of Russia accuses the judges in The Hague for issuing an international warrant for Putin's arrest. Hungary is blocking support for Ukraine, but at the same time is ready to finance the Lebanese army. Scandal in Slovakia. High school students disrupted a meeting with Prime Minister Fico after his remarks against Ukraine. North Korea has cut its supply of shells to Russia, so now there are half as many artillery munitions. Hello, my name is Yulia Kokan, and right now, here are the top stories. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. US President Donald Trump has announced nuclear weapons tests. At the same time, Washington is supposedly advocating for renunciation of nuclear weapons. This became known from a White House broadcast. During a conversation with the press, Trump was asked about nuclear tests. In response, the US leader said the following: We
will have nuclear tests because other countries are conducting them. There are countries that are conducting them. We have more nuclear weapons than any other country. I'm the one who modernized it and built part of it. And I hated having to do it, but there was no choice because others have it too.
Several media outlets report that during the conversation, Trump was asked whether a nuclear warhead would be detonated during the tests, but the American president never gave a direct answer. When asked for clarification on how soon the tests might take place, the US president replied, "Quite soon."
We are number 1, Russia is number 2, and China is number 3. They're catching up. They're still far behind us for now, but they'll catch up in 4 or 5 years. I think the best thing would be to denuclearize.
Let me remind you that just recently, Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov stated that if any other country resumes nuclear testing, Russia will be forced to take similar measures in order, in his words, to maintain strategic parity. So what do you think, gentlemen? Will the US conduct nuclear tests, and how will the Kremlin respond? Share your thoughts in the comments. The supply of artillery shells from North Korea helped Russia maintain its rate of fire on the battlefield in 2024. But in 2025, the volume of supplies was cut by more than half. The reason is the depletion of stockpiles and warehouses in North Korea. This was reported in a comment to Reuters by Vadim Skibitsky, deputy head of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. According to him, since 2023, North Korea has supplied Russia with 6.5 million artillery shells. Skibitsky said that in September, no shell deliveries from North Korea were recorded. However, in October, some shipments were tracked. However, about half of the shells received from Pyongyang were so outdated that they had to be sent to factories in Russia for modernization. In addition, according to Skibitsky, North Korea has begun mass production of FPV drones and combat unmanned aerial vehicles on its territory of medium range.
They are learning, they are studying their own experience in order to expand production on their own territory.
Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well, which country you're watching us from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And for now, we continue with the most interesting part. On the front, the Pokrovske direction remains the hottest spot. The Russians are throwing in as many forces as they can there. But, according to the General Staff, just in the past day, nearly 200 occupiers, 4 tanks, and 8 armored vehicles were eliminated there. Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky held a meeting with commanders right in the Pokrovsk-Mirnorad area. He confirmed that the Russians are not stopping their attempts to break through to residential areas in order to entrench themselves in the houses and expand their control. Meanwhile, according to Deep State, the Russians tried to storm Novopavlivka, which is 30 kilometers southwest of Pokrovsk. And unfortunately, the enemy did manage to land troops there.
Taking advantage of the fog, they set up a pontoon crossing between Yalta and Dakhny and ferried about 10 pieces of equipment across. Unfortunately, they were discovered too late, so the enemy managed to disperse their landing force in the central and southern parts of the village, with the troops scattering into cover.
It is known that at least 2 tanks and 5 armored vehicles were destroyed. At present, operations to locate the enemy are ongoing. The situation in Kupiansk remains no less tense. Although the occupiers are holding only a small part of the northern districts of the city, Ukrainian defense forces are conducting active sweeps. According to the military, fewer than 50 Russian soldiers remain in Kupiansk. Moreover, they are isolated from each other and from their main forces. In other words, these are scattered remnants. The 8th Special Operations Forces Regiment published footage of a sweep against a sabotage and reconnaissance group in the central part of the city, literally near the main square. During
the reconnaissance, the SOV group discovered the enemy in one of the buildings. The enemy had superior numbers and fortified firing positions. The SOF group broke contact without any losses. The building where the enemy was holding their defense was completely destroyed later using an M72 law.
In the Zaporizhzhia direction, our aviation destroyed a bridge that the occupiers were trying to use to establish logistics for further assaults in the Huliaipol area. Now the enemy will have to get creative, but we have suffered losses in this direction as well. The General Staff reported that Ukrainian units have withdrawn from the settlement of Novovasilivska. These actions are explained by the need to take up more advantageous defensive positions.
Due to the regrouping of combat formations, changes in the configuration of the line of engagement, and in order to preserve the lives of servicemen, our units have been withdrawn from the settlement of Novovasilivska to more advantageous defensive positions. Actions to block the enemy's advance and inflict combined fire damage on them are ongoing. And
in the Sumy region, fighters from the 71st Separate Jaeger Brigade destroyed several enemy locations from which Russian Rubicon units had been launching drones across the region. More details about what is happening on the front lines at this very moment are coming up in our report.
Russian assaults have become even more massive and ruthless. First and foremost for the Russians themselves. In just 3 days, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have already destroyed a third enemy column that was advancing to attack Ukrainian positions. It was reported the day before that the defense forces destroyed a concentration of manpower belonging to Russia's 51st Army near Pokrovske. The incident occurred in the settlement of Zatishuk in the Donetsk region. According to the Special Operations Forces in their Telegram post, at the moment the drone was used, enemy troops from 2 brigades were concentrated in the building, tasked with encircling the northern Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration. At the same time, analysts highlight other successes of the defense forces in this direction.
We're talking about the settlements of Krasny Lyman and Rodinsky. As far as I know, Rodinsky has been almost completely cleared of enemy presence. Additionally, fighting is taking place in the area of Kotlin, May 1st, 1 Travnia. There's also rather alarming information regarding the settlement of Rivne. It is located right between Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. There, the enemy tried to slip through our defensive lines. That attack was repelled.
Speaking about the situation in Pokrovsk itself, experts note that, as before, the occupiers are aiming to cut off the logistics of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. However, as before, they have not been able to do this. They are unsuccessful. At the same time, both President Zelensky and Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi openly comment on the situation. Yes,
the enemy has entered the city. Yes, the enemy is trying to attack the central and northern parts of the city. However, we are saying that, first and foremost, the most important thing is that the defensive operation, the defense by our units in Pokrovsk, is ongoing. Today, a wide range of scenarios are being drawn up regarding how this battle might end. We won't discuss them today, not because we don't know or don't want to. We fully understand that the commanders on the ground, as well as those higher up, are working through various scenarios, even the most negative developments.
However, according to experts, it is still far too early to talk about negative scenarios. Moreover, our General Staff, when describing the situation in Pokrovsk, notes that the situation has been partially stabilized, and in some areas they have even managed to demonstrate successes.
When talking about the actions of the 425th Separate Assault Battalion, Syrskyi apparently refers to another raid by the regiment's assault troops, shown in a video published by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The video was geolocated by the Ukrainian channel Infectum, which commented on it as follows. Assault groups of the Skelia regiment are conducting a raid on the northern part of Pokrovsk, clearing out individual Russian positions in the private sector and dispersing throughout the city. Interestingly, the groups managed to link up with the fighters who are holding the city council building in the city center, already beyond the railway tracks. These tracks divide the city in half and serve as a kind of barrier. So the previous video, where the Skelia groups made their way across half the city to the city council, wasn't just a flag for show, but a full-fledged capture and holding of the position. So,
in other words, despite all the statements from the Russian command claiming that Russia confidently controls Pokrovsk, Ukrainian fighters are not only able to enter the city council building in the southern part of the city and wave a flag, but also to set up a full-fledged strong point there. This also includes the recent victorious advance of a Russian column into the city. But this was not enough for the Russians. And just yesterday they moved out with a similar column to attack Kostiantynivka. The result was identical.
The Russians are trying to impose a chaotic tactic of assault raids, hiding behind the weather conditions as their last shield. But now even the fog is not always an ally, and sometimes it becomes a trap. The Ukrainian Armed Forces use, among other things, thermal imaging and optical surveillance equipment, drones with artificial intelligence, and rapid coordination between reconnaissance and firepower. That's why those who go into the fog are actually walking toward their own doom. The Ukrainian army demonstrates not only technological superiority, but also operational maturity. 2 columns, 2 attempts at a surprise offensive, and both times Russia loses everything. Equipment, infantry, the ability to maneuver.
While repelling massive attacks on Pokrovsk, the Joint Forces operation also keeps an eye on another important point on the war map, Kupiansk. It is there that Russia is pushing, trying to tie down our reserves in the Kharkiv region and prevent their redeployment to the Donbas. However, the Russians are not achieving their desired results there.
At present, our defense forces are systematically and methodically clearing those areas around Kupiansk where the enemy had infiltrated over a fairly long period of time. Regarding Kupiansk, I have a strong hope that we will succeed. Maybe not tomorrow, but in the near future, we will be able to fully stabilize the situation on this section of the front. And
at the same time undermine the Russian rear, experts add, and there are already the first signs of this. In particular, yesterday's strike on the port of Novorossiysk has been called by many a real turning point, both in the war and in the collapse of the Russian economy.
Ukrainian forces have reached a new milestone. For the first time, they successfully struck Russia's main oil export gateway in the south with a massive attack. Namely, the port in Novorossiysk. Drones hit the area, but most importantly, so did missiles. The drones distracted the air defense systems. And Flamingo-type missiles, it's hard to imagine any others there, delivered the finishing blow, resulting in flashes and explosions like these. On your screens are videos from local residents showing powerful explosions in several areas of the port.
Just like the ports on the Baltic Sea, Novorossiysk remains a key location for Russia when it comes to oil trade. It is also one of the most heavily protected locations by air defense systems. If our missiles manage to bypass these systems, we can confidently say that there will soon be many more explosions in Russia.
I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They hold the front and stand against a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you're not able to support them financially, write words of encouragement to them in the comments. I know they're watching us. And while Ukrainian soldiers are holding the line on the front, in Kyiv people are still recovering from the massive overnight strike on November 14th, when Russia deliberately targeted residential buildings where peaceful people were sleeping. It became known that one of the victims of this Russian terror was Natalia Kodymchuk, the widow of the first responder who died at Chernobyl. And now, almost 40 years later, the Russians killed Natalia. An enemy drone flew into her apartment on the 7th floor. The woman was hospitalized with severe burns, but unfortunately, they could not save her. Natalia's husband, the late Valery Kodymchuk, was the senior operator of the main circulation pumps known as Starik, of reactor unit number 2 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. On the night of April 25th to 26th, he was on shift and became the first victim of that tragedy. But this horrific missile and drone terror against Kyiv did not go unanswered. On the night of November 15th, Ryazan woke up to loud explosions.
I had just arrived to study. A student from Morocco.
At around 2 in the morning, a threat of attack was announced in the region. An entire swarm of drones flew toward the oil refinery. The local governor, as usual, reports on new successes of Russian air defense. Supposedly, as many as 25 drones were shot down, and the fire at the refinery was allegedly caused by debris. Yeah, sure, we totally believe that. Let me remind you, this isn't the first time Ukraine has struck the Ryazan refinery. This facility is among the 5 largest in Russia, and as we can see, regularly takes hits. As reported by Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation, the plant will now suspend operations.
The Ryazan refinery has been attacked. Following the Saratov refinery, it will also suspend operations. And
Meanwhile, a video is circulating online showing Turkish sailors watching the nighttime strikes on the oil terminal in the port of Novorossiysk, from the front row, so to speak, on the night of November 14th. More details on how Ukraine is systematically destroying the oil infrastructure of the aggressor country. Coming up next.
From the promise to take Kyiv in 3 days to total blackouts and the introduction of a state of emergency now within Russia itself.
We're bored. It's stagnant right now. We really want some action.
Thanks to bunker dwellers and Ukrainian drones, in some regions of the Russian Federation, things are really heating up, as Putin himself might say. For example, last night in the Krasnodar region, the distinctive sounds of incoming strikes, sirens, alerts and explosions were heard in Henichesk, Anapa and Novorossiysk. As a result, in Novorossiysk alone, last night's attack damaged an oil depot at the Sheskaris transshipment complex, one of Russia's largest oil terminals, through which a significant portion of Putin's oil exports pass. Local officials also reported that part of the coastal infrastructure was destroyed. In addition, debris from already downed drones damaged the storage tank and the pier of Chernomorsky Transneft. The latter effectively led to a halt in the pumping of black gold to the port of Novorossiysk. A state of emergency has been declared in the city itself.
This is a disaster.
It later turned out that the state of emergency in the city was not introduced for the safety of citizens, but to conceal the consequences of the strikes. After all, it wasn't just the Russian oil infrastructure that was hit, but also the local military unit. There was an air defense unit stationed on its grounds. At least one S-400 system and an ammunition depot were there. One of the eyewitness videos captured the moment the Russian ammo depot was hit.
This has never happened before. Afterburner on
Oil depots. After the footage was published, Russian Z-War correspondents were quick to point out that a Ukrainian drone couldn't have reached the target that fast. But a missile could have. The worst fears of the Kremlin were soon confirmed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Last night, our soldiers successfully used long-range Neptunes against specific targets on Russian territory. This is our entirely justified response to the ongoing Russian terror. Ukrainian missiles are now delivering more tangible and precise results almost every month. And
although Zelensky did not specify in his address which exact targets the Ukrainian Armed Forces struck, there is little doubt left among experts.
Leaving the official area now?
Based on official sources that publish videos and generally provide officially verified information, there is reason to believe that this type of Ukrainian weaponry is starting to appear and be used against the Russian Federation on a much larger scale. As a result,
Ukrainian attacks are becoming much more large-scale time after time. So in addition to Novorossiysk, the Ukrainian Armed Forces also paid another visit to the Saratov oil refinery last night. Once again, they targeted the Saratov oil refinery. A week earlier, Ukrainian drones had already struck the oil refinery. At that time, the facility had to be temporarily shut down. Now hopefully the refinery will be shut down for good.
There are still far too many military facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation that need to be taken out. And the lights in Moscow will go out almost automatically once certain facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation are shut down. We won't even have to try that hard for the Ilyich's light bulb to go out in Russia. That is inevitable. It
will definitely happen. Meanwhile, the Russian Eagle is plunging into complete darkness. I
don't know, honestly. I don't know. I'm just going along with it. It's fine. This is already the third one or something. Anyway, they're apparently launching rockets from our airstrip. There it is.
The local residents still can't recover from the recent raid by Ukrainian drones.
I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but I went outside, and out there, basically, everything was on fire. Basically. And
all this despite the fact that the Ukrainian Armed Forces, unlike the Russian army, strike exclusively at legitimate targets, military facilities of the Kremlin. As for imagining what will happen when Ukrainian Flamingos and long-range Neptunes start actively joining the attacks, we'll be able to see that in the coming months. After all, according to experts, serial production of the latest Ukrainian weapons has already begun, which means things will only get worse from here. At least for the military-industrial complex and for Russia's oil industry.
This is quite a diverse range, which makes it possible to destroy, strike and eliminate targets en masse on the territory of the Russian Federation, even at significant distances from the borders or the front lines. This, in fact, is a rather serious and positive indicator that, step by step, we are systematically taking out key targets on Russian territory and destroying, among other things, military production.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Weapons are being sent to Ukraine from the United Kingdom. London remains Ukraine's main partner and our chief advocate on the international stage. Next, we'll talk about what else the Foggy Albion has prepared to help the armed forces of Ukraine improve their position at the front.
Due to its weak position at the front, Russia is attacking critically important facilities in Ukraine. Civilian sites, destruction and casualties among the population. Over the past day, Russian troops have attacked energy facilities in several regions of Ukraine. Restoration work continues at the sites of impact. A very important aspect in this matter is the energy assistance from the United Kingdom. Understanding the situation, the country has allocated more than 14 million euros.
Putin is trying to plunge Ukraine into darkness and cold as winter approaches. These treacherous strikes are not only an attack on Ukraine's security, but also a threat to the economic stability and growth of the United Kingdom.
London has announced the allocation of additional funds for carrying out vital repair work in Ukraine's energy sector to help Ukrainians this winter.
Russia has made Ukraine's civilian energy infrastructure a target in this war. Now, as we enter the cold winter, they are intensifying their brutal attacks on energy and heating networks, while Putin tries to intimidate the Ukrainian people. However, Ukraine continues to demonstrate exceptional resilience despite all the hardships.
The funding for restoration will ensure uninterrupted lighting and heating in the homes of Ukrainians, as well as in hospitals and schools.
We are grateful to the United Kingdom and Prime Minister Keir Starmer for extending humanitarian and energy support to Ukraine, as well as for the announced energy assistance package. At a time when Russia is increasing the number of attacks on civilians and critical infrastructure, such solidarity is extremely important.
London continues to put pressure on Russia through sanctions as well. He announced new restrictions for the Kremlin, which will be gradually implemented throughout 2026. This is a continuation of sanctions against oil giants, Putin's associates, Rosneft and Lukoil.
These strikes pose a threat not only to Ukraine's security, but also to the economic stability of the United Kingdom itself. Ukraine's security is our security. Together with our G7 partners, we stand side by side, supporting Ukraine and overcoming all challenges.
From the very first days of the full-scale war, the United Kingdom became one of Ukraine's key strategic partners, not only supplying weapons, but also creating effective financial and institutional support mechanisms.
The United Kingdom will continue to resolutely enforce our financial sanctions as part of our broader response to Russia's barbaric invasion of Ukraine.
The United Kingdom has established an important system of military assistance to Ukraine, financing, innovative funds, international partnerships, credit mechanisms, and support for the Ukrainian defense industry.
It is Russia, not Ukraine, that must pay for Putin's illegal war. The use of Russian assets to strengthen Ukraine's air defense, our right to Ukraine's security, is critically important to us.
The UK Ministry of Defence has signed contracts with companies for the maintenance of armoured vehicles, the production of artillery shells, and the repair of transferred weapons. These contracts provide for the deployment of repair facilities on Ukrainian territory. It was the United Kingdom that became one of the first countries to supply Ukraine with high-precision missile weaponry. A real breakthrough was the decision to provide long-range Storm Shadow missiles. In 2023, the British government announced the transfer of cruise missiles capable of striking targets at distances of over 250 kilometers. Storm Shadow became the first long-range missiles received by Ukraine, and they were immediately used to strike strategic targets in the occupied territories. This month, the Armed Forces of Ukraine received a new batch of Storm Shadow missiles. The United Kingdom provided the Ukrainian Armed Forces with protective gear, vehicles, communications equipment, demining support, as well as assistance with equipment maintenance and digital transformation. Britain became the first country to announce plans to supply Ukraine with main battle tanks. Compared
to the T-80, the stabilization and optics here are much better. Aiming is done using buttons on a panel similar to a joystick. The turret rotates 360 degrees in 9 seconds. The Challenger 2 maneuvers, making it difficult for enemy anti-tank guided missiles to aim. At the same time, the tank itself is very accurate. As part
of the Challenger 2 tank deliveries, shells for them were also received. The British tanks were supplemented with specialized repair and recovery vehicles, which made it possible to ensure their technical autonomy in operation. In 2025, an agreement on a century-long partnership was confirmed and signed between Ukraine and Britain. This comprehensive document establishes long-term cooperation between the two countries in the areas of defense, economy, energy, justice, science, culture, education, healthcare, and social policy. Britain's assistance is long-term, so we can always count on the support of a reliable partner.
And suddenly, here comes the hypocritical joke of the day. The media reports that Hungary does not want to support Ukraine, but at the same time will fund the Lebanese army. Yes, you heard that right. Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó announced that Budapest will provide aid to the Lebanese army. Attention, this is from the European Peace Facility, part of which is intended to provide aid to Kyiv, and yet Hungary continues to block it. This statement was made by Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó in his post on the social network X. He noted that he told Lebanon's Foreign Minister Youssef Raghi that Hungary's national security interest is peace in the Middle East, and Lebanon's stability plays a key role in this.
We will not use our share of the European Peace Facility to arm Ukraine. Instead, we are redirecting €1.5 million to support the Lebanese armed forces.
Interestingly, back in February 2025, Szijjártó had already announced similar funding for the Lebanese army. And in July, the country's government appealed the decision to provide aid to Ukraine, filing a lawsuit against the EU Council and the European Peace Facility in the EU Court in Luxembourg. In addition, Budapest also objects to the use of profits from the frozen assets of the Russian Central Bank for the benefit of Ukraine. And now Szijjártó is once again announcing aid to Lebanon as part of Hungary's national interest. What do you think is really behind this decision? Share your thoughts in the comments. If in the case of Russia, I can say without a doubt that it's not just Putin and his boyars who are bad, but the Russians themselves with their savage bloodthirstiness, the same cannot be said about the Kremlin's partner countries. And here we have yet another proof of that. While the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, is talking with Putin and putting obstacles in Ukraine's way, whether it's about aid or European integration, the Slovak people are supporting Ukraine. And even school children are doing this. Recently, Fico held a meeting with high school students in the city of Poprad. During his speech, he began to criticize aid to Ukraine. What do you think the students did? They took out the Ukrainian flag, condemned the Prime Minister, and left the meeting. And you know what? Fico responded to the students' protest. He said that those who support the war can go fight in Ukraine. Well, it's not like I'm surprised by Fico's position, but treating kids like that is a complete failure. Give a like for the brave and principled Slovak teenagers. And right now, here's another masterpiece from Russian propagandists. A video has appeared on social media showing a Russian serviceman telling the camera that poisonous money is being dropped in the USSR, which is being sent to a concert for Kobzon. Listen for yourself.
The enemy is dropping banknotes from drones, and these notes have a QR code on them, and they're also soaked in poison. If you touch them without gloves, with bare hands, the poison gets absorbed through the skin, enters the bloodstream, and depending on how much poison was used, the person, in different ways, ends up as a 200th killed in action. Also, there's this QR code, and if you scan it with your phone, you immediately give away your position, exactly where you are. And then FIPV, artillery or mortars start targeting you.
Well, personally, I'm not surprised. It seemed like Russia had already voiced all this kind of nonsense and all their fabrications. But no, there's always more and more new lies. I wonder what will come next. Share your guesses in the comments. And here's a bit more cringe from across the border. The Russian Investigative Committee suddenly brought charges against the prosecutor and judges of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. Russia is accusing representatives of the ICC of daring to issue an international warrant and an arrest order for Putin and the Commissioner for Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, for the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children. This was reported by the Russian propaganda outlet RIA Novosti, citing the Investigative Committee.
The Investigative Committee has brought charges against the prosecutor and 8 judges of the ICC. They have been put on the international wanted list and arrested in absentia for the unlawful prosecution of Russian citizens.
You know, it looks about the same as if a robber sued a police officer for arresting him. But the cherry on top is that this whole circus is happening at a time when Russia officially does not recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. So basically, the Russian logic is, we don't recognize you, but we're very offended and have filed charges against you. Share your thoughts in the comments about yet another example of Russian absurdity. Import substitution in Russia is in full swing. A video was posted on social media showing a brand new Lada Niva Sport rusting right at its own presentation. At the exhibition, it turned out that this sporty beauty, priced at 1.7 million rubles, already had some rot. In fact, rust on the bolts and drives, as well as puddles of oil. See for yourself. This is what Russia is, so great and mighty, yet rusty and rotten. Like if you agree. What do you think of our news? Let us know what we should change to get better. We will definitely take it into account. In the meantime, give this video a like to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you soon.